Hello, everyone. Welcome, one and all, gentlemen, ladies, and all those who lieth betwixt. It is I, Tristan, the host of Step Back Tonight. Step Back Tonight is a weekly stream show that I do on this channel, Step Back History, in which I hang out with the internet for a few hours and we get to talk about topics and answer ASMQs and all sorts of other fun things. And usually I go on a 20-minute anti-capitalist rant at some part around the end of the first act. It's all very exciting. So, hello. Anybody here who it's their first time here? Please let yourself be known in the chat because we love to meet new people. Also, let's tell a little bit of story. So if you didn't see the splash screen before the stream started, the big thing going on in my life is that today is my first day as a full-time YouTuber, which is terrifying but fun. And also, I celebrated my first day as a YouTuber by getting a huge ass tattoo on my shoulder blade. That hurt a lot. So now that I have my first tattoo, that was huge. And it was designed by Scutch, who's drawn all sorts of really awesome bread tuber portraits. So I commissioned a drawing of the Orc Gang tattoo. I think if you saw it in the splash screen, if not, you can go to my Twitter at twitter.com/TristanPEJ and you can find some pictures of it there. Maybe I'll just open up some Streamlabs and I'll put it in. I'll give anybody who missed it a chance to. Oh, geez. Give everybody a little glimpse of this thing I did to myself. Yeah, I'll just go over to this side here. So, this is my back now. I thought I would show it off because this is really cool. What does he say? Someone's new? Hello, Medicine Tribe. Welcome to the stream. You are very much welcome. That's awesome. Well, so yeah, this is my back now. Drawn by Scutch, who is an amazing Scutch, amazing artist. The full piece. Let me show you what it's going to look like when it's done. I've got it somewhere. Yeah. Just getting the picture for you so you can see what it will look like when it's done. It's going to take... Today was just outlining and shading, and so next time I go in, I'm going to have to get all the coloring done, which is apparently going to be a whole ordeal in and of itself. So...
Tell them the story of the tattoo.
Let me just transition it over here. So this is what it's going to look like when it's done. Do orcs have orbs? I don't know. This one definitely does. Focus on dissipating the pain. Orb love. Yeah, I should have thought more about orbs while things were going on. So, story behind this tattoo here that Scutch drew. So, for anybody who has been in the Twitch or has been in the Step Back streams will know the story of the orcs, but let's get into that a little bit. So the orcs, this is a orc from Warhammer 40k. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, Warhammer 40k is a science fiction tabletop models game. I don't particularly care about the game, but what it has a pretty in-depth set of lore that basically is like Lord of the Rings in space. The thing, though, is that it's all told from the perspective of the Imperium of Man, which is like a fascist human empire ruled by a decrepit emperor who they literally have entire planets, like massive machines keeping him alive. And it's supposed to be a parody of a fascist society. They're humorless. They're just the most horrible. Like, they are this dark fascistic society, and because of their intolerance, because of their religious zeal, their hate, they are in decline. They are, if you read between the lines in the kind of lore of the game, the humans are on this slow path towards another dark age. But in more recent Warhammer 40k like fandom, it's become more of a thing that there are fascists who are how should I say this? Who unironically like things about the Imperium of Man. And so that's like part of the like the game or the fandom. And I was reading this article about it, and then I remembered that if there's one really great thing about when looking at the Warhammer 40k thing, is that the fans who take themselves and their lore, their very dark lore, very seriously, really hated these guys, because when the orcs were introduced to the game, they are really they're goofy, they're dumb, but the thing about them is that they have weird abilities where if they're psychic in a weird gestalt way, so that if they believe in something hardcore enough, it will kind of become true. And so they have like like their spaceships look like rocket ships that look ridiculous. And they believe that if they paint it red, it goes faster. And it works. It's like if psychosomatic stuff actually like manifests in the real world. And so, not only do they piss off the fash because they added a goofy element to a dumb aspect of the game, or if they added something silly and dumb to a bunch of people who take themselves way too seriously, but also they have this kind of collective consciousness, and they're just fun and rowdy. And so I thought about that. I thought about this thing, and so I thought that it would be fun for a race of space soccer hooligans who are a existential threat to the fascists, are a great leftist. I mean, obviously there's other shit because they actually are just like psychotic and evil, but besides that, it's more fun to think of it as a fun soccer hooligan group that just wants to take over the universe and make everything a big wag party. So that's where that came from, and so I sometimes lovingly will refer to you guys in the chat, in the stream, as the Orc Gang. And this tattoo has that, and then on top of it, it's got a bunch of other cool stuff too, like the belt buckle is an anarchy symbol. If you can see on his belt loop here, you've got a hammer and sickle, and then you've got the step back logo up here, and let me just adjust the top here a little bit, and if you can see, come on. At the top, there's like some historical helmets on the skull. So like this, I got Scutch to draw, and it was amazing, and I was really, really happy with it. So this is a beautiful step back up from Mardaka. Yes! I love that line so much. Thank you, King Peppy. I love that line. I love that. So yeah. I decided that this has had all the symbolism I wanted on my body. And after Scutch drew this amazing thing, I went and started getting it, seared into my flesh, so to speak. And so we're back at. Let me just show you guys the picture again. And so I did my first session today, and now this is on me. It hurt like a motherfucker, but then and I've got a lot of aftercare stuff I got to do. But yeah, that's basically the whole story. All right. So that's my, I'm sure you guys are fascinated by this story. And yeah, I'm trying to get, as far as step back stuff goes, also the news of the step back logo on it, which I think is amazing. Yeah, so, good stuff. And I'm trying to get a video out this week. Having a lot of fun editing it, so we'll see where that goes. But the plan is to get it out soon for you guys, because a couple other things I want to get before we get going is I am having a meetup in Toronto this weekend. So for anybody who is in Toronto or near Toronto and wants to come to a meetup with a whole bunch of cool people, including myself and Thought Slime and Mexi and Jose and Black Goat 666. We're all going to be having ourselves a wonderful meetup. And it's at 7 p.m. on Saturday at a place called Beerocracy. There's a link in the chat for you guys. So I hope a couple of you guys end up coming out if you can. It would be awesome. And the last thing I want to say for anybody who is doing this, I will be this next Monday heading to Los Angeles, and I will be going to VidCon. VidCon. So I'm going to be doing VidCon over the next over next week. I hope to meet some cool Step Back fans while I'm there. The plan. I don't have any planned meetups or anything like that, but I do know that I'll be hanging out with some pretty cool people. So if you see me, say hello. All right. I'm going to give you guys lots of time to pass along some questions. The helmets. Yeah. Yeah. The tattoo, the thing with the helmets, the tattoo is fun. I felt every single millimeter of the design of that tattoo. Whew. Okay. Now let's get the questions up. Oh my, you guys are already coming through. All right. So where are we getting started? How important do you think aesthetic and rhetoric is to spreading socialist causes and ideas? Well, all right. So how important is it that socialists make good arguments and have a good aesthetic to them? Well, I think it's pretty important. The thing is, if you want an idea to do well, the way that humans are programmed, so there are 3 levels of argument in rhetoric. One is the logical good argument, which I think leftists win on all fronts. But where we fail is in making the strong emotional appeal and the right moral appeal. And so I do think that us trying to reach people through things that have to do with morality, things that have to do with like emotion, and invoking that through culture, which is like the main way that we spread ideas, the main way we tell stories is through culture. And so I do think that if socialists want to get their stuff out there, we need to become culturally relevant, which is an uphill battle because right now almost every form of culture is dominated by corporate interests. This is why you'll never see a openly leftist TV show on a mainstream corporate network. This is why on YouTube, 3 Arrows recently had a video taken down, while freaking Steven Crowder can make openly homophobic slurs constantly and be fine. It's always going to be an uphill battle for us. And so that means that we need to work on our putting our pill in with the food, kind of like the way you give medicine to a dog. You have to make entertaining, entergaging content that also spreads socialist ideas. And I think somebody on BreadTube once called me the master of leftist dog whistles. And I think that dog whistle is kind of turned into a bullhorn a little bit at this moment, but I hope that my part has to do with introducing these ideas as the not radical things they are to a bunch of people. All right. Next question we got here is, do you think Canadian reactionaries are more racist to compensate for the fact that they are Canadians? I think that Canada is a country that has lots of racism in it. We say we're not racist, and definitely compared to countries like the United States, it's a lot more demure. The thing about Canada that makes it different is that Canada has a form of racism that is impolite, and so we don't talk about race. We don't talk about racism while still having the exact same, systemic racism that the Americans have. Which, is bad. Because in some ways it means that we can't even have the public discussion about race that they're having in the United States. So, for Canadian reactionaries to be racist is actually just more saying the quiet part out loud. And when it comes to open bigotry of Canadian reactionaries, it's mostly reserved for Muslims. And so right now it's becoming increasingly normalized to be openly racist against Muslims. And yeah, that's bad. And the shit that we do to Indigenous Canadians is it's also just, it's a travesty. It's genocide. It's cultural genocide. All right. Why did Bernie say throwing judges of the Supreme Court is constitutional when obviously isn't? I'm trying to remember what. So Bernie made some sort of argument when he talked about the Supreme Court that he's against packing the court, but he is saying that he has the constitutional right to rotate judges out. Which I don't is not what's it called? That's not throwing judges out, it's rotating them. So I would say I don't exactly know the constitutional argument that Bernie Sanders was making. He wouldn't say something like that if he didn't have some sort of defense. And I think that if I remember correctly, that Franklin Roosevelt had a similar plan when the Supreme Court wouldn't pass or wouldn't support New Deal legislation. He threatened to do something that's very similar to what Bernie was offering, which was that he can't kick people off the Supreme Court, but what he can do is give once a Supreme Court justice goes above a certain age, a sort of a maximum age that they can serve at, or at least an age they can serve at that if they get to that age, they have to be swapped out with like an understudy or something like that. I don't exactly remember the argument behind it, but I do know that FDR was lined up to do it, and so I would imagine Sanders would have no problem putting together some sort of argument. I'm sure Sanders probably has lawyers who work for him who have a much more cogent argument than I have for why he can do that. I shared a meme that basically says the problem with rent is landlords kill them all. Mao taught us. Some liberals took it personally. Am I advocating for mass murder? My punishment. I mean, okay. Let's unpack this. Killing all the land, I definitely, okay. So this kind of comes to things like guillotine memes. So, are guillotine memes a problem? I would say that they are in questionable taste, but I don't think that they're a problem. I think that they speak to the sort of historical context of why income inequality is so bad. And landlords definitely are bad. I mean, there is a slight advocating for mass murder going on here, yes. Which I would say might not be in the best taste. Because I would think that maybe we should take land away from landlords in a way that doesn't require killing them. That's my sort of statement on that. I would hope that we could find a way that doesn't involve mass murder. I feel like if we follow this line of questioning, are we going to end up with something around the lines of what we found with the killing fields of Cambodia? If we're going to murder all of the people who hold the reins of power or who are preventing the permanent revolution or whatever it is that the leftist, whatever leftist current comes to the forefront whenever we, take over the world or whatever, I really don't want it to be the one that says kill everybody with glasses, for example. So yeah. I don't know. I would think that I'm going to be making what I will say is if I'm going to elaborate on this kind of stuff, hold tight, because right now this is a video I have planned to come out probably near the end of November, and I want to have my ducks all lined up so that I can make the proper video response to these ideas about how do we talk about the atrocities of previous communist governments as leftists without letting Jordan Peterson and other right-wing people steal the narrative. But I am still several months away from that, and at the moment I am immersed in other topics, and so I haven't hit the books, it's just have some vague ideas. So hold tight. Hopefully, some random geek, you'll get a nice answer near the end of the year. And actually, if I remember correctly, it was a Patreon stretch goal. So thank you very much, all of my patrons, for making that video possible. All right. What is the next question? Out of all of the aspects of capitalism, why are cops and troops the aspect that people are the most indoctrinated to support, even by some statist leftists? Oh, well, that's because cops and troops are the people who maintain that order. I mean, people are ingrained to think that cops and troops are the brave men and women, but mostly men, who are a thin veil of protection from us against the evils of the them. It's a very powerful narrative, and that has resulted in a lot of cultural reverence for these people. That then it is considered highly taboo to go against, to criticize. Hence why, like, even at the debate that happened last week, you had friggin' Joe Biden finishing with, God bless the troops. And so, yeah, I think that it has more to do with the myth and the narrative that we say. And in many ways, honoring the troops and thinking of and cops and thinking about them as the people who are doing some good deed is a good narrative for thinking about your society. Like cops, for example, their job is mostly to do terrible things to the victims of the culture we live in. They murder and harass people of color, the poor, the mentally ill, the homeless, because they are the underclass of capitalism. They are the victims of capitalism. And so, if you frame it as them protecting us from some intangible evil, why they are evil, we don't know, that means that you don't have to frame the society you live in as something that is malevolent. For the soldiers, it's a similar story. That the soldiers are at the forefront of keeping us safe from the thems abroad. When, the thems abroad are usually the victims of our own, of either colonization or modern day imperialism. So, again, it's easier. It's much more comfortable to frame it as they're protecting us from an evil, and we don't exactly know why they're evil. It's just a thing that they are doing. Yeah, that's not good. But that's why. And it's one of the things that'll be really tough to break people of. Easier with cops because now we have the Black Lives Matter movement that's sort of shaking things up. Although, we'll see. Freaking state prosecutor is one of the front runners in the Democratic primaries. So, I mean, we haven't gotten there quite yet, but here we are. So, I would say to that, that's why. Have you ever considered rebranding or a change of aesthetics from horror? I don't know. I like the way that Step Back. I like the branding of Step Back. Obviously, the logo is set in stone because now it's literally tattooed on my back. I think, although it'll always have nostalgia value, so I could change if I wanted to. But I feel like I should at least ride it out for a little bit longer. So I guess what I would say is I have thought about rebranding, and I kind of am going through a process of that right now. I've kind of started off as Step Back is about the history that's not the military history, and I'm sort of pivoting into addressing the like not only making the mission statement to address reactionary abuses of the past and increase historical literacy, but on top of that, making it more, making those definitions a little bit more loose. Like most bread tube channels are more of a phenomenon of personalities and not so much like ContraPoints does not. It's sort of her nom de guerre, right? It's not exactly like a channel that's like ContraPoints, a channel about discussing things. And I have kind of branded myself as like, because I came from education, as like, this is the history channel of these things. While like I think I can get away. I think I'd have to like, you know, so I don't know. I think though that I think that like my place as like the aesthetically friendly leftist who can bring people in with fun topics and interesting stuff and sort of push them further down the leftist rabbit hole and normalize leftist ideas to a wider audience. I feel like that's more where Step Back lies in the sort of sales funnel of getting people to become woke. And so I think that I perform best in that kind of level. All right, what's next? I recently moved to Toronto from a northern place. What things should I be taking advantage of now that I live in a big city? Also, the humidity is trying to kill me. Help. Well, Laura was here. Hope to see you on Saturday. Toronto. The fact that we have a world-class museum, I feel like we don't appreciate that enough. So if you haven't gone to the Royal Ontario Museum, you definitely should. And they have temporary exhibits all the time. So if you have the money to get a membership, I would definitely recommend it. We have world-class libraries. Toronto Reference being an amazing library. I think that getting your library card is a pretty cool thing about living in a big city. Taking up the events, like getting into events, is pretty cool. The fact that like we just had the Pride Parade last weekend or 2 weekends ago now, and it was huge, and like people came from all across the country to come see it. So that you are a place where people come to do things means that you get your choice of all sorts of cool cultural events and projects. And also take advantage of whatever kind of things you're into whenever they do a live show or a meetup or whatever, like concerts and musical theater and shows and leftist YouTuber meetups, you know, that kind of stuff. I would definitely take advantage of those. But also, one of the things that I would love to do is get more, or is one thing I would do in the city too is it allows you to build pretty much any sort of social group that you want. Like, for example, one of my friends who moved here, she's formerly religious and bi. And when she moved to Toronto, she used the new contacts as a way to explore her queer identity in a way that she couldn't do where she was before. And she had a group of gay friends and everything like that that made that she kind of was like building up. When I moved to Toronto, used the big city to get a D&D group. And I have now a very lively social life based on the fact that I have a D&D. I play D&D. So, you know, get out, get in, like, You know, like, just take advantage of the fact that there's a lot to do. And that because there's so much to do, you just have to do, you don't have to go to any particularly one thing, just go to stuff you're interested in. So that's my advice. Okay. And yeah, the humidity is freaking terrible right now. It is a brutal, oppressive heat in the city right now. Because it's all swampy. The blisters on my feet finally cleared up, but now my right knee is really hurting. Have you ever thought about replacing your limb with bionic counterparts? I have a lot recently. I haven't. I imagine I will because I'm getting to the in your 30s is when things just start hurting for no reason. Hopefully I'm gonna get more shape, but like I definitely think this will become more of a thing as I get older. Right now, I think the biggest thing is that like the hangovers when you're in your 30s are so bad compared to when you're in your 20s, and it makes me think, oh man, I need a bionic liver. Who knows? I don't know if these things are gonna happen anytime soon. Honestly, I know that's kind of a sad thing to say, but I think that a lot of the Ray Kurzweil types, the real hardcore transhumanists, are usually very optimistic. For example, does anyone remember how we were 2 years away from we were 2 years away from driverless cars? We were 2 years away from driverless cars in 2017. I don't see them yet. I think that a lot of the hype cycle is very real. All right. The shock doctrine talks about how George Soros supported devastating mass privatizations in Poland after the Cold War. I understand it's almost like he's not a crypto-communist. No, it's almost as if George Soros actually uses a lot of money to liberalize places and also to de-radicalize left-leaning groups. You're turning 55 in a month, my heart bleeds. Well, Professor Frank, I don't even know what hangovers at 55 are like. I feel like I would just be dead. Like if I drank more than 2 beers at 55, you just die. You're just done. Your life is over. You did it. You broke the rules. You're gone. Oh man. Okay. Thoughts on Andrew Yang dog whistling while white nationalists posting white birth rate decline, worrying about Andy No. Or is that when? I can't remember how you pronounce that. I know it's like Vietnamese or something, but I can't remember how to do it. Yeah, I mean, Andrew Yang, like, man, so many people are mad that I didn't talk enough about Andrew Yang. Yeah, Andrew Yang definitely talking about like white birth rate decline and worrying about what's his name, the guy who got milkshaked. That stuff is just not great. I've always been nervous about Andrew Yang, not only because I'm skeptical about, like, first of all, because I was skeptical about UBI as a concept, especially Andrew Yang's idea of UBI, which is a UBI that requires that you opt out of other social services with this freedom dividend. But also this like cozying up, yeah, the fact that he memed his way in to the debates and has like some quite disturbing people in his fan base. I know that when he was on Deconstructed with Mehdi Hasan asked him some questions about why do you appeal so much to Nazis. He didn't really have a good answer. So yeah, I do definitely know that he's like, he doesn't really, he's like got this like weird Silicon Valley right wing bullshit that you really just, it's not good. Oh wait, this is Andy's the one who got beat up, isn't he? Okay, yeah, I don't really know that I can't really speak to the Andy no situation because I don't know the details. I just know that he got beat up and there's pictures of him on Twitter and everybody is wagging their finger at Antifa for beating him up. That's all I know. Why are so many liberals obsessed with weird thought scenarios as if a human and a dog are drowning, who do you save if you can only save one? I don't know. I didn't know that liberals were obsessed with such thought scenarios. Is this new? I would like to hear more about this, Doughboy DeVito, because this is a first for me. Sorry I can't answer. I'm more fascinated by the question. Okay, what's next? Are orcs anarchist? If I remember correctly, they're both. If I remember correctly, that the orcs in Warhammer 40k kind of just follow the biggest, meanest orc, because orcs don't stop growing, so they just get bigger the older they are, and so orcs just kind of follow the biggest, meanest person that they can get around. Which is not very anarchist. What do you think of NEETs, i.e. young adults voluntarily living off of the parental and state assistance? I mean, I can't speak to all of their situations, because there's all sorts of cultural, like, there's all sorts of factors that are leading to the context where that happens. But in my mind, it seems it's a lot of undiagnosed depression. It's a lot of alienation, capitalist alienation, where people feel like they have, because NEET stands for like not like no. It's like no
education, employment, or training.
Yeah, no education, employment, or training. So basically, they're just doing nothing. And in my mind, that's just like a thing where it's like sometimes it's disability, in which case there's not much you can do about that. In some case, it's depression, which I would argue if depression's serious enough, it should be considered a disability. And the fact that we live in an economy where there's an extreme amount of income inequality based on generation. And so, yeah, I'm not exactly sure. Like, I'm not a person who really thinks that there are people who are living off of their parents and have absolutely no desire to better themselves that aren't suffering from some form of alienation or depression. Yeah, I think that's where I'd be at. Because, yeah, if you, like, right now, if you're like a person my age trying to find work, like, it sucks. Like, it's really hard to find any job, let alone one that doesn't suck. And even if you do, you're not going to make that much money. If you go into training or education, you're just going to get debt that's not going to help you find more work anyway. And so you're sort of in this trap. And so it's like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do anyway? Why does capitalism not like investing in schools and parks? Well, Doughboy DeVito, it's because they, it's because they're not profitable. Schools and parks are public works. I feel like you would not go very far with a park that charged an entrance fee. You know? You'd have to have permanent security details and, like, turnstiles for getting into the park. It's like, that's not a way to make money. Schools... I mean, capitalists love investing in schools. They just, right now, the state has a monopoly because, or the state at least plays a large role because, you know, public education is good, but there's definitely, capitalists are very interested in investing in schools. They're trying to destroy the public public education so that they can privatize schools. It's very much like it's in the neoliberal handbook. What do you think, like, all of those attempts at making, like, charter schools and private school vouchers are? It's an attempt to try and weasel private education into the system. Now that you have a tattoo, you might want to take off your shirt to show people. Are you planning on getting buffed up? Do some lifting, perhaps? Yes, I am, Gad. I'm actually going to the gym on a regular basis. I started today. Tomorrow I might not, because I'm told I'm not supposed to sweat too much on this thing, but it's definitely part of my plan. I want to join the swoletariat a little bit. Yeah. But I also don't mind showing people my back, because it's a really cool tattoo. I think the art makes up for it. Makes up for having to see my horrid flesh. Why are you not playing Wolfenstein? Because I think if I was going to play Wolfenstein, so I've done enough Step Back Tonights to know that when I just hang out with you guys, this is what you want. Anytime I played games, the numbers were way, way down. So my hope is that sometime I'll play Wolfenstein and other games on Twitch and sort of develop a little bit of a thing there. But I don't know when that's going to be or what it's going to look like, because I haven't really had a serious thought about it. But it is a thing that is on my medium to long-term list of things to do. So more on that as it comes. But through the numbers that I've been seeing in streams and stuff like that, you guys overwhelmingly want me to just talk. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay. Chan R asks, what exactly is your ideology? I would say that the best fitting one would be anarcho-communism. Though I'm not slavish to that. I have strong pacifist tendencies that a lot of my fellow anarcho-communists would disagree with. And also, I advocate, obviously, with my Democrat series for some degree of electoralism as a useful tool to make lives better for people today, even if it doesn't move us towards the anarchist utopia of the future. But I would probably still, so I'm not like slavish to the ideology, but I would say that more or less an anarcho-communist. When asked about Roe v. Wade getting overturned, Bernie just said Medicare for all would include abortion. How would you solve the problem of states making abortion illegal? Well, could very much. All right, so how do we get into this? So I think that what Bernie is getting into is that if abortion is only going to be held up by these private charities and they're at the whim of state governments and things like that, that abortion is always going to be under threat. When we recontextualize abortion outside of the sort of religious debate and about taking out Planned Parenthood in the United States, then, and realizing that it has to do with, that it's healthcare, it's part of reproductive healthcare, that it would not be as big of a controversy. Like Canada, while access to abortion is still a major issue, because any doctor can perform an abortion, or any doctor who can do, like a gynecologist, for example, can do an abortion. But if they are against if they are against it for religious reasons, they can recommend you to someone who will, which makes, in my mind, it makes reproductive care easier to get a hold of, and a lot of people who don't get abortions might not get abortions because they can't afford it. But I would imagine that it. How do I explain this? Universal programs that provide services that include things like abortion are harder things to kill than a practice that's just being held up by a Supreme Court decision. For example, look how robust in America how robust in America Social Security is. It's by far the most popular program. It's because it's universal. And even people who have ideologies completely diametrically opposed to it, they wouldn't be against. They would never like. It is still sort of a third rail in American politics to talk about getting rid of Social Security. Even if abortion is free, it won't be available in red states if the people who take part in it are risking murder charges. Yes, that's why I would say that you would need to make it part of the bill that includes Medicare for all. Like, if you're going to expand Medicare, I feel like the big part is that you need to stop the red states from doing that. And the part is about wresting the conversation away from who is from religious people and moving it towards a discussion over whether or not it's a health care thing. Guess that's where I would go. It's not a satisfying answer because Bernie hasn't put on a it's a vague answer because Bernie Sanders had to be vague because he had like 30 seconds to answer the question. But I imagine there are some steps in there. But yeah. Because like when abortion was legalized in Canada, it happened because of a doctor by the name of Morgentaler who was performing safe abortions. And then, he was brought up on criminal charges for doing it. It went before the Supreme Court. Then argued about constitutional rights and won. And so I would say, yeah, I'm not exactly sure where I'm going with this anymore. I'm talking in circles because I don't have an answer because I'm not a lawyer. But I imagine there's an answer. That probably has to do with rotating out Supreme Court justices. Because there's no way that, like, if you passed an equal rights amendment and you had, like, a left-leaning Supreme Court, that you would not be able to defeat whatever weird anti-abortion decision is going to come out from this, like, pack of ghouls we have now in the Supreme Court. Whoa. Okay. What's the big deal with Nike shoes having the revolutionary American flag on them? I thought America was super into nationalism and national history. I don't know. I've never heard of Nike having, like, the Betsy Ross flag on them. Do you think that harnessing the power of love and making strong moral convictions and a strong stance for American values can win the election? What about policy wonks? Well, Jesus Soto or Jesus Soto or whatever you want to, whatever you prefer to be called. I imagine it's Jesus. I I imagine this is in reference to the Williamson 2020 title of this stream. So that's a very serious question to a meme title. And I would say that... What can I say to that? I don't... Like, Marianne Williamson is a meme. I don't actually think that the power of love is really a thing that's going to sway voters. I think it's a nice thing to think it will sway voters. But if anything, righteous indignation and anger is what gets people to the polls, not like some weird intangible idea of love. Who'd have a better diet, a peasant farmer laborer in 1065 Britain or an unskilled factory laborer in 1865 Britain? Probably the peasant farm laborer in 1065 Britain. British people in the 19th century were still before the discovery of vitamins and minerals. So for the most part, both of them were probably just eating bread, but at least farmers probably had vegetable gardens of their own, while a Briton would not. A person who lives downtown is probably just eating bread. Yeah. I think we've had this discussion many times on this stream, but like, we grotesquely underestimate how healthy and satisfying the life of a medieval peasant was, and how industrialization and urbanization was not necessarily the universal step forward that everyone seems to think it is. Why is capitalism homophobic? Well, capitalism's propagation relies on the consumer class, the people who are giving their surplus labor to their bosses, so that all of the wealth funnels to the top. You have to make sure that they're divided, so that they don't develop some sort of class consciousness and realize that you're taking all of their money. So it's much more profitable to stew things like racism, sexism, homophobia, and build on those sort of historical precedents, because it'll keep class consciousness from coming together. The other reason is because capitalism is only interested in doing what is profitable, not what is good. And so if 50% minus one people approve of homosexual human rights, and 50 plus one believe that are homophobic, then it's slightly more profitable to sell things to homophobes. And therefore, you're going to be homophobic. Or, more likely, you're going to find some way to brand two separate things so that you can sell things to both of them. But at least they're divided. But really, it's not so much that like capitalism is homophobic as much as capitalism is amoral and cares about profitability, and takes whatever is a method, takes whatever is in society and ratchets it up so that they can sell things to them. And on top of that, the way that marketing works is so based on demographics, and uses people who are clumped under these categories, that it then uses marketing to really build identity and community around groups of people. And so it makes it harder to breach those divides, but it makes them easier to market to. Guess those are the real answers. Jesus has another question. Do you think leftists need to work on their political messaging or talk their walk? I think that leftists do need to work on their political messaging. I feel like a lot of leftists get too stuck in academic discussions about politics and political science and stuff, and don't spend enough time trying to articulate the messages that they have to regular folks who have been propagandized to think that socialism is evil, and telling them about the, without using the word socialism, talking about the problems that capitalism creates and things that we could use to solve it. Because a lot of studies have shown that most people would consider themselves socialist if you described their beliefs in so many words but didn't say the word socialist. Like, polls say that if you don't say the word socialist, but you say, would you advocate for a world in which there was less or no income inequality and that everybody had the basics that they needed to survive? Most people would say yes to that, even though that is fundamentally a socialist idea. But if you said, are you a socialist, they would say no. And that's because people don't really know what their actual ideology are. People kind of have a grab bag of positions on different issues. There's no real overarching ideology behind it all. And so what I think leftists need to do is articulate their ideas without necessarily marketing them as necessarily socialist or leftist ones. Until they go a little bit further down the sales funnel. You need to start them easy, and unfortunately, leftists are really bad at the widest end of the sales funnel of tricking people into the, or not tricking people, but of getting people jazzed about the ideas without the formal names and communities attached to them, and then you kind of move them down. And Narcadog just sent me a DM on Twitter that says, I see the anarchist flag in your background. I see you. Yep. Yeah, I've had that since I was in university, and I decided to hang it up so that people would send me DMs saying that they see it. And yeah, the other thing, too, is we need to kind of get rid of the stigma around socialism and communism. And on top of that, we need to, we're kind of in a question already doing that. Like, now more millennials support socialism than support capitalism. So I think we're already getting there. We're moving. It's just convincing lots of people of something is sometimes very difficult. And so it takes time and it takes patience, which is tough because we don't really have time for either. But here we are. My concern with a maximum age for anything is ageism. A lot of people think Bernie's too old for president, even though he's still sharp. Thoughts? People have told me about this. People have talked about this a few times. I'm not exactly sure what Sanders' argument for rotating people from the Supreme Court is, but I actually push back against the people who say that Bernie is too old because I do think that there is ageism as an argument. Like, there's the idea that he'll die in office, but people literally elect running mates for the explicit purpose to take over if the president dies. Second, the president gets fairly regularly medically taken care of. Probably some of the best healthcare in the world. And on top of that, if the president was showing signs of mental degradation, aside from the current president who's already showing signs of dementia, but he's kind of he's kind of surrounded himself with yes men, so they won't do it. But I imagine if Sanders started showing signs that he was getting something like dementia, or if he had a serious health emergency, he would probably resign or retire, which I don't see why that's a problem. In my mind, it just means that you have to put some thought into the running mate and make sure the running mate's good. My concern, we got that one. He wouldn't say something like that if he didn't have the backing. It's not possible. He's just a 77-year-old man who forgot what he's talking about for a few seconds. I think that was a reference to a conversation that I wasn't, that happened in the past. Which is worse, being in a Siberian labor camp in 1947 or being in an English workhouse in 1847? I'd probably say the labor camp. The labor camp is intended to work you to death, so I would imagine it's that. Neither of which are good conditions. It's kind of a would you rather from hell. Best monarch and why is it James the Fourth? Trying to think about any monarch who willingly dissolved the monarchy are the best monarchs. No, the best monarch is the butterfly because they never hurt no one. I was watching a new Disney show, Amphibia, and I'm pretty sure the episode I watched had an anti-worker democracy message. Is it silly to read political message into children's cartoons? No. Even if they didn't intend for it to be, all culture is a reflection of the people who make it and the culture that produced it. You can't really write something that's apolitical. Even by making something that's apolitical, you're sort of making a statement about our current society and saying that it's fine. But honestly, it would be incredibly difficult to make something that was truly apolitical. Children's television has all sorts of stuff in it about what people desire. Like, children are people who are still in development, so there's going to be thoughts about what kind of person they want to make. Like, there's all sorts of stuff that can come out of that. So, in my mind, yeah, you can look at pretty much all culture to interpret messages from them. What piece of media that you watched as a child that you watched again as an adult surprised you the most because of how problematic it was? Recently? Maybe Ghostbusters? Ghostbusters has got some serious problematic shit in it now that I'm an adult. Trying to think of something that I came back to. Oh, Harry Potter has got some real weird stuff about some real, like, kind of being just kind of okay with slavery and also, like, anti-Semitism and stuff with, like, goblins and shit. Like, yeah, there's some serious problematic stuff in there. Where are we at? Oh my, the questions just keep coming. Sweet. Video on the history of concentration camps. That would be like, concentration camps have been around forever, and I don't see, like, I now have categories for how I choose what my videos are going to be about. And I'm not exactly sure. Like, I needed, like, some way for people to just send me video ideas. Like, I'm thinking I'll make, like, one of those Google Forms or something. But I have a thing now where I have a handful of questions. This actually comes from Jeff Goldblum, of all people, as the 4 questions I ask for whether or not I want to do something. And that is there something fun that I can do with it? Can I make something that's funny for me? Or can I make something interesting? Or can I make something substantive? And I would need to think about a video like the history of concentration camps to think if there was a way that I could make it that would be able to... Because, like, when I agree to make a video, like a step back prime video, I have to dedicate, like, 3 months of my life to it. So I have to put a lot of thought into which ones I take on. Okay. Can we see the tattoo? I think, didn't Kelly give you a link, right? So there's a Twitter. I don't really want to take my shirt off during the stream. It would just be awkward. And plus, it's got, like, this, like, saran wrap bandage on it right now. So it'd be a whole thing. So I can't show it live, sorry. Plus, even if I did show it on webcam, you would not get as good a picture as the picture that was on Twitter. could put it in the... I could show it again, though. I'm sure some people who are in here that were not around during the first part of the stream. So for the people who are new to the stream, I'll show another picture of the tattoo because some people don't use Twitter, and some people weren't here early in the stream. So I'll just show it for a little bit. So this is the tattoo I just got today, since someone was asking about it. It's a real beaut, isn't it? Okay. Let me just move that and go back. Okay. Okay. You can't be a Christian and an anarchist because the rule of God, if it existed, would be an unjustified power structure. How would you respond to that? There are Christian anarchists who believe that that there shall be no authority but God. Is God an unjustified hierarchy? Well, I wouldn't really argue for the existence of God. But if God were real, would he be a justified hierarchy? Not necessarily, but if it's consensual, then yes. If Christians believe in God and they consent to his authority, then I don't see that as an unjust authority. But the problem is, you can't... The way Christians seem to think most of the time is that they think that they're being oppressed if they're not telling other people what to do. And that's where things become problematic, in my mind. Would you consider Warren to be progressive? To an extent. She's definitely more progressive than a lot of Democrats have been in the last few decades. I think that I would argue that Elizabeth Warren is fairly progressive. She's part of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. She's got a way more progressive agenda than most of the other candidates running for president, and is one of the most progressive people in Congress generally. The thing that I would say about her, and the reason why I would not recommend her over Bernie, like some people think I should, is because her programs tend to be, because her plans are so... Her plans all have some sort of limits on them. Like, for example, her student loan cancellation has, I don't remember if it's paired with free university in such a robust fashion as Sanders's is. I can't really speak to that. But her student debt cancellation has a maximum amount, and also on top of that is means tested. And in my mind, I think that it's better electorally. It's better to get it passed through Congress. It's better to sell it to the American people. And it makes it more robust of a program if it's universal and it covers everything. So canceling out student loan debt, all of it, in my mind is a stronger sell and a stronger program to canceling out up to $500,000 of student loan debt for people who come from families that make less than X dollars a year. That, especially because student loan debt is rich people don't get student loan debt because they're rich. Okay. Let's see what's next. Okay. What legal means and who could sue the government for human rights abuses in migrant camps from a human rights perspective? There are ways, I'm not a lawyer, but I know that there are groups like RACIS, RACIS, I think that's how it's spelled. But there are groups in Arizona, Texas, and California that are all working to push they're all like working together to push these things in a way that they're trying to push to have some sort of legal way to get these people out of the concentration camps they're in. And I don't know what their legal arguments are, but obviously there is one because there are lawyers trying to make it. And I think the ACLU is trying as well. So I would probably say that the legal means for helping people in those situations, if you want to help out Jesus, is to look for those organizations and help them with money. Which red states do you... This is from Ina. Which red states do you think Bernie would be able to win? I think that he could win West Virginia. I think that he could win regular Virginia. I think that a lot of the states that have this sort of strong anti-government record that are considered red states could very easily vote for Sanders. Current red states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, which are really the three states that cost Clinton the election in 2016. I think those would all go for Sanders. I think that Ohio could go for Sanders. I think that Montana could go for Sanders. Because I think that, because Montana, like in the Montana primary, voted so overwhelmingly for Sanders, if I remember correctly. I even think Indiana could go for Sanders. Like, there's like, really, I think that a lot of the quote unquote red states that could vote for Sanders are the ones that are the Midwestern Rust Belt type states. Dalton Jones, thank you so much for the $1 super chat. That's much appreciated. Thank you. I just went. This is my first day as a full-time YouTuber, and so I'm feeling very vulnerable, and it's helped like yours with the super chats that help me make this thing happen. The patrons, people who give money on PayPal, all of you, you're freaking heroes. Okay, how about Step Left? I actually like Step Back because I like one of the things I wanted to do with Step Back, and why I call it that is because I think that history and historical literacy gives you perspective. And I think that very often, in the way that we look at the world, we lose the forest for the trees, and in my mind, we should step back and look at things with a wider perspective. I think, what's it called? I think Thought Slime called me Step Left History in the video where he made fun of me. Or where he owned my ass with facts and logic. What do you think about the book 1984? It's good. It's a good breakdown of the way that totalitarian states fuck with your head. Very misinterpreted. There's a lot of... I really hate the people who think that them not being allowed to say the N-word on Twitter is somehow just the same as the state in 1984. That is both a misreading of George Orwell and a misreading of 1984. But it definitely is a cautionary tale against how, like, a bunch of other things, but like how authoritarian states can mess with your head, and also about how language can really like the limitations of the words that you know can impact the way that you think, which is interesting. There's a lot of interesting questions in and of itself. Brain in a jar, when? Honestly, it might take a long time, because even there's been some people who have like come close to trying to experiment for what I think there was a recent experiment that was done where they tried to it was a test. It was an experiment to see how long a brain, when it hasn't been exposed to oxygen, so how long can a brain that's not exposed to oxygen go, and then when it gets reattached, how long does it take before a brain is truly gone? And because the answer turned out to be longer than it turned out to be longer than we anticipated, because people thought, like, all brain activity is pretty much gone, like, very soon after death, but it might be a bit longer. But they had to do it in very specific ways because they were using pig brains for the experiment. But they couldn't ethically start pumping oxygen and blood into a pig's brain after it died, because if the experiment worked, they do not know what the experience of being an active brain without bodily inputs would be like. And because we haven't been able to do that test, we can't do that test. It's considered unethical because it could be horrible. So that's sort of a precedent in scientific ethics circles, which will make it a very long time before we're experimenting with putting brains in jars. Extend and Pretend, thank you for the 20 knock. All right, I'm gonna have to do some math here. Or I'm gonna have to do some Googling here. Norwegian kroners. Okay. Well, thank you much for the Norwegian kroners. I appreciate that. Thank you. That's awesome. Like I said, you think it's not much, but these things really do add up, and the help that you guys are giving me is the reason why I can do Step Back as a full-time job. That's why, like, my appreciation for you guys, the Orc gang, you guys, it's the reason, one of the reasons I got the tattoo. Like, the reason that the Orc is on there is because you guys are great. I mean, there's a lot of other reasons, but it's a pretty good one. I even if 20 years from now, Step Back is a distant memory, and I am working as a barista at Starbucks or something, I want to be able to look back at this moment and think, hey, there was a time when there were some really cool people who wanted to get together and do something cool, and help me make art, which is such a rare treat that people get to do. A kids film, The Queen's Corgi, that's about to come out, plays Trump visiting the Queen for laughs. What do you think about the ethics of portraying a fascist as a comic figure in kids' film? I mean, isn't like... Oh, boy. I mean, in some ways it undermines the seriousness of Trump as a dangerous person, which, we kind of have this mix of... Ben S., thank you so much for the 420. Nice, much appreciated. Thank you. You're doing the Lord's work there, Ben. Yeah. Taking Trump. I struggle about this thought myself. Is Trump is it okay to make fun of Trump? Like, does goofing about Trump subtract from his dangerousness? Because in the 1930s, when Hitler was in power, but World War II hadn't started yet, a lot of people made fun of him because he was ridiculous and he was loud and boisterous and he did all the like very gesticular and all that kind of stuff. And so people made fun of that. Charlie Chaplin made a whole video. Wow, my brain is really dead now. He made a whole movie about it, or he was in a movie about it that was more or less it. And so I don't know what the answer to that is. It's complicated, because in some way mocking something like that makes it feel like it's benign and not a threat. But then again, when we're dealing with the rise of fascism, for our own mental resiliency, we do need to be able to laugh at the dark world that we live in. And then for kids, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't have an answer for you. Sorry. Whoa. Hello, Professor Frank. Thank you for the $20.99 super chat. That is awesome. Oh, you You guys are so kind. Oh man, my heart is so happy. My back hurts, but my heart is happy. Oh man, my back really does hurt. Oh, it's uncomfortable. Oh yeah, Heil honey, I'm home. That was a weird thing that existed. All right, in one of Ian M. Banks's book, okay, a character says if you drop someone from an anarchist culture into a capitalist one, they'd get arrested fairly quickly. Do you think that's accurate? Yeah. A person from an anarchist society wouldn't have a strong concept of property and ownership, so at the very least, they'd be very quickly arrested for shoplifting or jumping the turnstile, because they don't think they wouldn't realize that you can't just walk onto the subway. You have to pay money, or that you can't just go and grab food if you're hungry, because you have to pay money for the right to eat in a capitalist society, which, if you frame it in that sense, makes it sound really fucked up. Yeah, so that is correct. I really need to read Ian Banks, don't I? Okay. I hear people point to Hobbes to say socialism doesn't work, human nature argument, you can't trust people. It makes me wonder if Hobbes was racist. Hobbes definitely was, he was a person of his time, so he was definitely racist. But I do think that the Hobbesian argument about human nature is fundamentally flawed, but also has deep roots. Like, I think that even not long ago, like, even Kelly would probably still say that, like, to some extent, human beings, if they're not controlled, are inherently will be selfish and violent. And
I still don't even know if I haven't given that up.
so she said she doesn't know if she's even given that up yet. And what I would point to, if someone made that argument to me, is all of anthropology, especially the study of uncontacted civilizations, or the sort of uncontacted tribes, where we've seen different societies and different cultures that have radically different concepts of the self, of property, of all sorts of things, of how to organize society. So that's basically that would be my response. Is a lot of the studies that we've seen in comparative anthropology have shown that human nature and the state of nature idea is a lot more plastic than we thought. And that really humans are a reflection of the stuff built up around the way that our economy functions, and not really the other way around. And so we don't make capitalism because human beings are inherently evil, but we make capitalism because of industrialization. And that then we build cultural institutions around preserving it. And there's sort of like a kind of back and forth, if you will. But that if you dropped people on a desert island with no previous context about society, they would not necessarily become a capitalist society. In fact, if anything, it shows they'd more likely become rather egalitarian, because that's how human beings existed for like 90% of our existence. Do you have a degree or experience? Well, Brandon Matthews, I have several degrees, too many, actually. I have all my degrees. Let's see if we can do them all. I have a associate's degree in general arts and science. I have a bachelor's degree with honors in history. I have a Master of Arts in American Cultural Studies. And I have another Master of Arts in history. And then I dropped out of a PhD in my third year. But I did drop out post-comps, which means that I would have had enough knowledge to teach a U.S. history course at the university level. So that's my degree or my experience. I also taught U.S. history as a TA for several years, and I taught a children's literature. Yeah, you want a weird experience having for the few people who got it. There's like 20 people out there who in the 2013 to 2014 school year had me as their TA for a children's literature course. So you can just imagine what that's like. All right, what's the difference between Maoism and Leninism? If I remember, Mao was more inspired by Stalin than Lenin. Mao had a focus on developing socialism in China and about rapid industrialization, sort of like Stalin was into, which led to so many deaths. And there's also like Maoism is sort of like the beginning of like the East Asian form of socialism, which has like nationalist elements on top of being like mixing socialism with like anti-colonial movements, which is a distinct difference between Leninism and Maoism. Those are the things. It's also sub to Black Pigeon Speaks. Don't sub to Black Pigeon Speaks. That would not be good. Would you consider making a video series on leftists who were killed, i.e. Salvador Allende, Fred Hampton, etc.? Again, I'd probably go to my list of questions. If I was inspired by somebody, I might do it, but just to like force myself to do it, I think that would be... While I think that they might be some successful videos, I'd have to think about each one individually. The next series I plan on doing is because of a Patreon stretch goal. Thank you, patrons. I'm doing a series on the BRICS, so the Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The powers expected to become the world leaders at by the 21st century. Okay. Was Confederation a mistake? From Laura Was Here. No. I do think that if Confederation hadn't have happened, the geopolitical situation in North America would be pretty rough. Freedom of movement from places like Newfoundland to Alberta, for example, is the only reason why Alberta has an economy. But also, the reason why Confederation was done as a mutual defense pact. Would Canada have been able to... Had Canada been, divided, it would have not been able to resist American invasion. And so I would think that if not all of Canada, at least part of it would be part of the United States if we didn't do anything about it. A liberal podcast I follow says Bernie won't get any more support because he's had so much media coverage. Everyone would be inclined to support him, probably already does. Response? I would argue that Bernie's media coverage has been, at least in most of the large platforms, has been an open hatchet job against him. I can't think of a single media platform that has published an article that is positive about Bernie Sanders. I think the closest I've seen is a CNN article where they quote-unquote fact-checked his statement about 3 people owning more than half of America's wealth, and they said it was true. But, I don't think I've seen any other pro-Sanders corporate media piece ever. And so, in my mind, most people, if they do know about Sanders, it's ridiculously wrong. Like, fundamentally wrong. Thank you so much for the $6.90 super chat. Nice. I know what you were trying to do there. Thank you. I appreciate that. And the Marianne mindset will prevail. We can only hope. I will use love for political purposes, and sir, love will win. Because everybody needs to call their girlfriend in New Zealand and say, oh, girlfriend, it's on. Man. I really hope Marianne Williamson lasts long enough that I can do the Democrat series on her. Because, like, it's unbelievable that someone like Marianne Williamson's running for president. Like, actually unbelievable. Yesterday, I told my mom I was talking to my mom because we were visiting her about the Democrats and the Democrats who were running. And I said something about Marianne Williamson, and she was just like, oh, like, the only I've never heard of her. The only Marianne Williamson I know is, like, this, like, crackpot new age author. And I was like, no, it's that one. That one is the one that's running for president. And she's like, oh, God. Yeah, so it's like, it's so great. It's so weird. I love it so much in, like, the weirdest way possible. So to pick up on the Sanders thing. So Sanders, in my mind, will have no ability to win with media coverage. Like, or if he does, it'll be in the way that Donald Trump won with media coverage, where everyone was so obsessed with hating him that he just got tons and tons and tons of free airtime, which resulted in people hearing his positions and liking them, even though they were covering it in a negative light. And so I could see, if Sanders keeps in the race and the field gets smaller, that he'll get more press coverage, especially more than he got during the 2015-2016 primaries. But in my mind, everything he says is going to be weaponized by the media against him. Everything. When he was interviewed by when he was interviewed by CNN, and he said, and he was asked why some people support Elizabeth Warren over him, he said some people would prefer a female candidate, and I understand that. And Vanity Fair's headline for their response to that was, Sanders says that people are only voting for Elizabeth Warren because she has ovaries. And so, like, that's the level of media we're dealing with. And, like, you know, Washington Post, Democracy Dies in Darkness, is owned by freaking Jeff Bezos, who Bernie Sanders has explicitly gone after. So, in my mind, like, winning over the media is not going to happen, but getting the media so mad that they're, like, just saying his entire platform, which would be extremely popular if people ever heard it, would be the thing. But I think that Sanders' bigger strategy is going to be more about ground game. I think that Sanders is not going to win on... I think Sanders' support can grow based on people's conversations, based on the progression of the debates, and the conversations that are had on the ground. And because Sanders is trying to bring new people into the party and is trying to get people who haven't voted in decades voting again. And that potentially touches vast numbers that the Democratic Party hasn't seen in a long time. And so that could change a lot of things. Thoughts on fascists slowly turning subreddits and certain parts of YouTube into their territory. How effective is it? It seems to be pretty effective. It'd be really great if, you know, these platforms actually did something about the fascists on their platform. But as we mentioned earlier in the stream, supporting fascism is way more profitable than supporting socialism. So they're going to keep letting them thrive and succeed. The fact that, the fact that Black Pigeon Speaks got unbanned from YouTube shows like, fascism is more popular than not fascism. And if you control the high traffic areas like Reddit and YouTube, you have a firm place in our collective culture. And neither of these platforms have decided that they want to take responsibility for that. And so things are just going to keep getting worse. Opinion on orbs. Orbs are great. I think that we don't talk enough about orbs in our political discourse, especially the political economy of orbs. We've talked a lot about foreign policy and geopolitics, but we've never talked about astral projection and spiritual geopolitics. For example, very, very good and normal presidential candidate Marianne Williamson has been at the forefront of defending America on the astral plane in the realm of spirits for decades without any public support. And so in my mind, it's finally time that the Democrats deal with the most important issue of this campaign, which is protecting the spiritual realm and protecting the material plane from incursions from the forces of those who have weaponized hate or fear for political purposes. And so that's why we need to support Marianne Williamson, not for president, I think for Empress of the planet. Otherwise, what happens when Galactus comes? When Galactus comes to Earth, who will be able to stand up to him? I don't know. He eats planets. But Marianne Williamson. Yes, welcome to Step Back, the only channel not afraid to speak up about orbs and orcs. And it's true. Okay, these are some good questions. A Czech party is lobbying to make Archduke Karl von Habsburg the head commissioner of the European Union. Do you support the return of the HRE? Oh God. If it works even half as if it works like it did before, it wouldn't mean much anyway. It would just be a disaster. Not to mention aren't the von Habsburgs extremely aren't they what's it called? Don't cut him. He might have blood disorder or something because they're so inbred. Laura was here. Are you worried about the urban-rural divide in Canada? How can we try and fix this? Hopefully, in the Soviet Union, the very flag that it had was about unifying the farmers and the factory workers. I don't know if you guys knew that, but that's what the sickle and hammer is all about. It's supposed to be about the urban factory workers and the rural farmers coming together and banding together. And I think my answer to that is my answer to a lot of questions, which is the way that you try and fix the rural-urban divide is socialism. Socialism. That's the answer. That's something that both people in rural and urban areas can get behind. Choose A or B. A, to each according to his ability or need, or B, dog eat dog. I'm going to go with Professor Frank. I'm going to go with B because dogs shouldn't eat dogs. But A makes sense and works well. B has dogs. And I like doggies. And I want a doggie. But I don't want a dog that eats another dog. That's one of the kinds of dogs that you end up putting down because they killed another dog. So really, the dog eat dog cancels out both dogs. So I think to each ability according to his abilities, blah blah blah, is a good one. The Orb Gang. Excellent. Okay. There are 51 concurrent viewers. What is going on? Who signed off on this? Who said all of you could watch my stuff? Let's say there is a dispute about if rotating judges of the Supreme Court is constitutional. Constitutional disputes are decided by the Supreme Court. Do you see the problem? Yeah. I don't know what the plan that Sanders has is, but I imagine he has one. I'm sure he doesn't He's running for president, has an army of people working on his policy positions. I don't imagine he just says shit willy-nilly and has no plan about it. I just imagine that it's probably a like multi-hundred-page document that that was written up by lawyers, and probably makes no sense that I would not be able to do this. Sorry, I tweeted this out and posted this. Very good. You're some random geek. You're awesome about that. You're always tweeting out my stuff. It goes noticed, and it's very much appreciated. I appreciate you for what you do. 25582 actually. I noticed that every time I post a video, you post it on BreadTube, and that is much appreciated as well. Okay. Thoughts on the Elon Musk car tunnel? The luxury tunnels for rich people better than the subway. Yeah, right. Yeah, the tunnels are dumb. The only innovation that came out of the Boring Company is that he turns because like one of the biggest things when you're digging subway tunnels that makes them expensive is what do you do with all the dirt, and shipping away the dirt is really the thing that costs the most money when you're building subway tunnels. And so the Boring Company's only innovation is to on site convert the dirt into bricks. And I mean, I guess that's a solution, but the thing is that the tunnels are very narrow that the Boring Company are making, and they're just underground tunnels. Like the Boring Company tunnels don't have much of a emergency exit plan. Elon Musk has been called out for the fact that like there doesn't seem to be any health or safety issues. There doesn't seem to be a way to be like, how do you handle multi-car pileups in your underground tunnel? Or because the tunnels are very narrow, they're explicitly too narrow for subways to be put into. And of course, it goes back to like the just using public or private transit, which I think is gross, because it's environmentally destructive, even if it is an electric car or whatever. So Elon Musk's car tunnel is filled with dumb ideas. Like, beyond dumb ideas. And, like many Silicon Valley bros, has no plans for anything going wrong, has a disregard for all regulations, and will probably end in a disaster. Thoughts on Lauren Southern quitting YouTube? Oh, sorry, I missed one. Concentration camps have been around forever. These were concentration camps in antiquity. I mean, when you have lots of people that you don't know what to deal with, people have been setting up concentration camps for ages, yeah. All right. Thoughts on Lauren Southern quitting YouTube? What can I say but don't let the door hit your ass on the way out? Beyond that, I'm like, it's good. I am glad that Lauren Southern is not on YouTube. I hope that she continues to not be on YouTube for a very long time. How much does it hurt to get a tattoo? A lot. I was actually surprised by how much it hurt, and apparently it's going to be worse the next time I go in. It feels like a needle. I mean, this Kelly pointed out, like, this is because exactly what it is. But imagine a sharp needle being dragged along your back, digging into your skin for hours. So, like, just like, oh, God. And, yeah, so just that scratch, just never ending. The only thing that keeps you sane is that they never really are doing it for more than, like, 10 seconds at a time. So, like, you can, like, kind of, like, bear down. Like, by the end of the tattoo, I was, like, physically shaking, and I was kind of, like, when I went home, I was in a bit of a daze, like I had gone through some sort of trauma, and, like, the way that the skin is, the way that the skin is, apparently going to react is based on trauma to the skin. And that it's like, yeah, like it's rough. What did you get a tattoo of? Oh boy. All right. Well, I'm so happy about it. I get to put this picture on the stream again. I got a tattoo of a bunch of things, and I will describe it again because maybe some new people came in. I don't know. So, all right. So this is the tattoo I got. It has a bunch of stuff that has to do with anarchism, has stuff to do with socialism. It has a whole bunch of symbolic meaning about orcs and Warhammer 40k that I talked about earlier in the stream, so you can watch that when the stream's over. But yeah, and then it's got the Step Back logo on it. So, and I really love it. I love it so much. I love that this is a picture of my back now. All right. So yeah, the tattoo hurt a lot. And I know that the one I'm going for is like the next one I go in is going to be even worse because I'm getting it colored next, which apparently is much more of an ordeal. But like it's one of those things where like it's really horrible when you're actually doing it, and then when it's over, you're like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to be doing that again. So it's like, in my mind, that's like being on an airplane. So I don't like airplane rides either. Not that they're scary. I just think that they're boring and painful, or not painful, but like I just never. Every time I'm on an airplane, I just want to get off. So I don't know. It'll be. I think it was. It hurt a lot, but I think it was worth it. I think it looks real. I think that like. I went through the pain, and now I have this really pretty thing on my back, which I think is good. Okay. That Mormon anarchist you knew, did you ever ask them how you felt about all the shitty stuff the church says about women, LGBTQ+, and more recently child abuse? Yeah. Yeah, he said he had serious issues with the way the church talks about those, about the issues of the church. Like he said... when I talked to him, he said he promised that he was not going to sugarcoat anything, that he was going to talk about the issues within the church, that he was going to talk about the bad stuff, he was going to talk about like the racism and everything. And when I point out to him, he's like, yeah, this is a really shitty thing the church is doing. I wish they'd change it. So yeah, I did ask him. Means testing is just a way to make more paperwork. Yeah. Means testing and having like the caveats like the Elizabeth Warren programs do mean that the program gets more expensive, because then you end up spending more money with oversight and overhead and making sure that people's means are tested, which means you need like more bureaucracy and stuff like that, and that makes the program less efficient, make it cost more, and in the end it'll make it less politically popular. Oh, I'm seeing the word kitty. Oh, hey Phoebes. Hey, girl. Okay. What do you think about the United Nations? I mean, I'd prefer if we had no states, period. But if we do have to have states, I would prefer that there was a supranational organization like the United Nations for countries to air out their grievances with each other that don't involve going to war. I think that it's done I think that we've done quite a lot. I think that the UN has done quite a lot to prevent war. Not as much as it could have, but it has prevented war. And I think that the Cold War might be a much more bloody story if we didn't have it. So the UN is good. It could do so much more, but it hasn't done enough. Why is there a regular Virginia along with West Virginia? Oh, that's actually a fun story. The reason why there was only one Virginia until the Civil War. When the Civil War first started, the part of Virginia that would become West Virginia was the part that did not want to secede and wanted to stay in the Union. So while West Virginia left to become the Confederacy, West Virginia stayed. That's why. Do you ever feel sorry for Noam Chomsky? Dude's like 150, and only in the last few years has he started seeing mainstream political movements he can actually support. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that it would be good to see, even like when you're old, the ideas that you push forward actually going through. It is, I mean, we owe a lot to Noam Chomsky, and I hope that we can appreciate that. All right. In Red Mars, there's a character who had to lie about being an anarchist to get on the ship. Do you think admitting you're an anarchist really would get you kicked off from astronaut training? Oh, today? Totally. They have to, like, right now, like NASA and stuff like that have to eliminate so many candidates that they will take literally any reason to not make you an astronaut, and that would definitely be one of them. Anarchists are still on lists of like police departments as like subversive organizations that need to be taken down. Like, police infiltrate anarchist groups all the time. It's still like you talk to any anarchist group and they're still dealing with like cops who are trying to infiltrate the group. Like, it's still constantly a threat. So I feel like that is definitely a thing that would not be that would definitely kick you from astronaut training. All right. Sorry, I'm a little. You said you'd be happy for social democracy to become the norm. Once we get that, is it sustainable long term, or does capitalism always trend towards the worst version of itself? I mean, capitalism does always trend towards the worst version of itself. Yeah. But in the meantime, I would love to have some to push things towards social democracy. I feel like that would be an overall good for the world. What do you think of the Plymouth economic system converting from shared responsibility to property ownership? I don't actually don't really. This is like the Plymouth colony. I don't really know too much about this. Thoughts on the cult of reason the right has? Example, facts and logic. The cult of reason doesn't use reason. They don't use facts and logic. They use conjecture and conspiracy, or fairly often they do anyway. And they're hardly, like, they tend not to do a lot of research. Yeah. Plus, like, the overemphasis on, like, what facts and logic mean is, like, the way that they talk about it is so limited and closed-minded, and it's just not. It's like they think that because they took like a composition and rhetoric class in their first year of university, that all of a sudden they can defeat some of the greatest scholars who've ever lived in intellectual debate. And it's like, no. Like, we've dealt with people like you before. We deal with them all the time. They're called second years. They're some of the worst people ever. Andy Goody, thank you for the $1 super chat. That is much appreciated. Thank you. I will make good use of it. Oh, let's be fair. I'll use it on candy. Okay. Take it back. I would not just use it on candy. I also use it for paying rent and groceries and stuff. Which, you know, we need to live, because we live in a world where you have to pay money to live. Isn't that a wonderful thing that this world does? I'm glad that we live in a world where you have to pay money to not die. That's definitely a sign of a healthy and functioning society. Where are we? Oh, yeah. Would less people be incentivized to go to university if they lived in a communist society when level of education had no bearing on quality of life? Maybe. I would argue that more people at least should go to university, because I feel like in a communist society you would want to move away from the idea that university is just a thing you do so that you can get jobs, and that university should be more about a thing about what's it called? That university should be a part of a young adult development that helps you learn things, follow your intellectual curiosities, learn other people's experiences and things like that. And I really wish that everyone could get the opportunity to do it. David Packman said he disagrees with the idea that it's impossible to be racist against white people because racism is only something that you can do if you're privileged. Over your race, you're bigoted against. Response. Okay, Packman said he disagrees with the idea that it's impossible to be racist against white people because racism is only something you can do if you're privileged. Over the race, you're bigoted against. So I don't understand. So David Packman thinks that it is possible to be racist against white people because if you're because of privilege. Like, it sounds like he's arguing about why it is impossible to be racist against white people, but using it as an argument for the inverse. I don't understand. Because, it is impossible to be racist against white people because racism is a systemic structural set of oppression that is used against, or that is created by colonization, is created literally by white people against people of color.
I think you're saying he disagrees with that
Oh.
argument.
Well, I don't know why he disagrees with it, because the entire history of colonization backs it up. Pastapunk. Do you plan on making a video on Rojava in the future? I already have. That already exists. You can go and find it. Should Lauren Southern just live in a cave and never bother anyone, especially never ever again fire flares at Doctors Without Borders boats trying to sink them? Yeah, I wish that Lauren Southern should live a long and healthy and happy life very far away from everyone else. I think that she would do great living in the woods, far away from other people. If she were to live on some farm in northern Manitoba where it's just her and fields of canola, and she can happily live out her days growing canola oil, sure, that's fine with me. As the line from Fiddler on the Roof goes, may the Lord bless and keep the Tsar very far away from here. Wouldn't there be international organizations if the planet was anarchist anyway? Oh yeah, definitely. There would be so much more integration and organization at all levels if we lived in an anarchist society. An anarchist society, in my mind, would be extraordinarily complex. There would be tons of organizations and overlapping things all working with each other. It would be, it'd be a lot more complicated than the world we live in now. How can we spot a cop infiltrating a group that we are part of? I'm not exactly sure how that works. You might want to ask Thought Slime about that. I think he might know better than me. He's done a lot more, actual anarchist work. Socialism is a dirty word. What do you think is a better label for highly regulated market economy? Economic justice. Dealing with income inequality. Anything like that. Do you believe socialism, given its working class benefits, can support those with inabilities to work conventionally without excluding them from society? Yeah. In my mind, the way that I would want that a socialist economy is supposed to function is from each according to their ability, to each according to their needs. That's it. So If you are only able to work so much because you have some sort of disability, that's fine. We'll take it. But that doesn't mean that you don't deserve everything that you need. Like everybody contributes as much as they can, and everyone gets everything they need. We have way more than enough. Economic democracy is actually a pretty good label. Okay. All right. It's 9:05. We've answered all the questions. Maybe we should come winding down.
I have a question.
What's that?
Can you tell us about the history of things like military parades and what it means that Trump is bringing tanks to DC?
All right. So, history of military parades?
Well, like, why is it a big deal that Trump is bringing tanks?
Why is it a big deal that Trump is bringing tanks? Because it's overtly militaristic. This is like it's a thing that you only see militarist dictators do. You saw it in the Soviet Union. You see it in North Korea today. It's not exactly a thing that non-authoritarian societies do. Say trans rights? Oh, I totally can say trans rights. Trans rights! All the trans rights. If there's a trans somewhere, give them some rights. Do you mind me posting on your Discord? I worry everyone else there hates me. I have no problem with you posting on the Discord as long as you're not a jerk to people. Oh, apparently a cynical historian did a thing on parades. So, okay. So, I think we're going to call it an evening. Everybody, you have been amazing. Please, treat your orbs well. Astral project safely. And always remember, Marianne Williamson 2020. We need to fix America's vibes, people. Vibes. Have a great night.